Yalda Hakim reporting there from Yemen for us. So, were you in the pro flip-flop camp or against last night? Is the dress too white, the skirt too patriotic, everything too short or too long? Women broadcasters has long got used to an intense, let's say it, sexist focus on how they look. Sportswomen, we might bet, have too. The comments by John Inverdale about Wimbledon champion Marion Bartoli were perhaps unusual, only that they were said out loud with a mic on. But the debate about sexism in sport is now alive and kicking. Today, as the Culture Secretary Maria Miller boycotted the British Open Championship, held at a male-only golf club, Harriet Harman defied her to go one step further and ban all male clubs altogether. More on that in a moment, but first, over to Alan.
One more thing. It's a great model. It goes like a bomb. And the car's not bad either. Come on, let's go burn some rubber.
Alan Partridge making his name on the day-to-day some 2 decades ago.
Oh, hey! Hey! Spunky lady!
But his attitude perhaps isn't that far off that of sports reporter John Inverdale during his Wimbledon coverage.
I just wonder if her dad did say to her when she was 12, 13, 14 maybe, listen, you are never going to be, a looker. You're never going to be somebody with long legs. So you have to compensate for that. You are going to have to be the most dogged, determined fighter that anyone has ever seen on the tennis court.
Inverdale apologised to Marion Bartoli, but this week Maria Miller demanded to know what further action the Director-General of the BBC would be taking. Tony Hall hit back that it had been made clear his comments were unacceptable, but said the BBC would continue to enhance its coverage of women's sport.
Everyone thought that the world of women's sport would change dramatically after the Olympic Games, that the landscape had changed forever. But the simple fact is that a 2-week tournament won't do that. What it did is highlight to us that if you give women that platform, they can perform and achieve at the highest level. But it's much more complicated if you want to get women into the papers, onto television all year round.
This weekend, sports fans will have to choose between the golf at the Open, the Ashes and the Tour de France. Maybe women's sport just can't compare.
All you've got to do is watch the World Cup. It was on this year in January in India. It was the Women's Cricket World Cup. It was fantastic. It was great cricket. There were tight games, there were sixes, there were lots of boundaries, wickets. I mean, it was just as exciting as any men's World Cup. It's just ignorance, really, I think, on the part of most people, because they haven't really come across it.
Europe, get ready. England are coming to take on your best.
The BBC and other broadcasters have committed to increasing coverage of women's sport. The BBC heavily trailed its coverage of the Euro 2013 tournament, and England's matches have averaged viewing figures of more than 1 million. But flick through the sports pages and it doesn't much look like a woman's world. Wait, there's a girl. Well, a girlfriend.
When it comes to deciding what subjects we cover in the newspaper, it's very difficult, but all the research we do indicates that the vast majority of our readers of the sports section are men, and even of the quarter of our readers that are female, a lot of those prefer men's sport. So it's not a problem that I can solve on my own by putting women into the paper. It needs a much bigger, more radical approach.
One consolation is we're not the only ones with a problem. This is the ad the German public broadcaster ZDF used to promote its team in the Euro tournament.
Ballsauber in Schweden. Die UEFA Frauen-EM 2013.
Well, joining us now, Harriet Harman, the Shadow Culture Secretary, who's launched a campaign to improve the coverage of women's sports and ban all male sports clubs, and Louise Hazel, who competed for Team GB in the heptathlon at last summer's Olympic Games a year ago. Welcome to you both, and nice of you to come in. And Louise, just talk us through your experience as a woman in sport. Have you always been aware of sexism or...?
Yes, definitely, and unfortunately, going back just to 2012, teammates from myself and also teammates from Team GB were subject to comments about our weight and in our preparations for one of the biggest competitions of our lives. And I think we only have to look as far back as 2011 to the sports personality nominees to see that there were no female nominations. And that, to me, was a major indication of the fact that there still exists this problem of sexism in sport in this country.
Do you think there were no nominations because there isn't as much coverage in the first place?
Yes, I think it's definitely something that needs to be addressed, and it's definitely moving forward and improving, having seen, the women's football and cricket mentioned there. But it's definitely still a work in progress, but I feel that there were women that were well worthy of nominations, but more importantly, they were overshadowed by perhaps the male performances. just pure and simply because I don't think the people that were nominating, some of the magazines, male magazines that were mentioned, felt that women were worthy of those, of the deservedly the publicity that they deserved.
You've done coverage, you've done modelling shoots and stuff for GQ and all the rest of it. Was that a pressure to, I don't know, to get coverage for the sport, or did you feel objectified by doing that?
No, for me it was a personal choice, and I think that every female sports person should be able to express themselves in their own way, but by no means under pressure, you know, to give in to that sense of being objectified by males. And so for me that was definitely something that was personal.
And you've just started golf.
Indeed.
Do you want to play it at Muirfield? Do you feel locked out of a major part of the golfing world? Well,
I feel that, you know, perhaps bringing a ban to male membership-only clubs would be a step in the right direction. You know, last year I was invited to a number of golf days and I was surprised the fact that there were no female facilities and that I had to go and get changed in the spa, which definitely made me feel like a second-rate citizen. It wasn't welcoming. It didn't make me feel comfortable.
Yeah. Harriet Harman, Maria Miller straight away batted back your suggestion to ban all-male clubs. Where do you go from here?
Oh, I didn't know she'd done that. I think that's disappointing because David Cameron, the Prime Minister, said today in relation to the Muirfield issue, well, it's old-fashioned, it's an anachronism, men-only golf clubs should be a thing of the past. So I really welcomed that. And also Nick Clegg, the Deputy Prime Minister, said that it shouldn't be happening. And Maria Miller herself is objecting to it sufficient to actually do a boycott. And my point is that actually there's an exemption for men-only sports clubs which allows them to carry on discriminating. That's in the Equality Act. It allows them an exemption. And I'm just saying, instead of wringing your hands and just speaking out against them, why don't we have a cross-party alliance and say, if you're running a sports club, you've got to allow women in on the same terms as men. But also the point Louise was making about sponsorship, it is incredible that 0.5% of the sponsorship that there is, commercial sponsorship, goes to men. Goes to women, sorry. Yeah. Goes to women. For men, it's 99.5%. But just and therefore the women have to, you know, to get sponsorship, you know, and yet women got a third of the Olympics medals and nearly a half of the Paralympics medals, and yet 0.5% of the sponsorship. And the government money that goes into sport, and there's a lot of government money that rightly goes into sport, the lion's share of this public money goes to men in sport, and it's public money. It should go equally to women.
Would you like there to be equal coverage right now on the BBC, elsewhere, of women's sports? Would you like to say 50-50?
Well, I'd like them to do much more to give a proper showing for women's sport. And I actually think that
But you wouldn't legislate, you wouldn't say, come on, we've actually got to do this.
I wouldn't legislate for the BBC or even commercial broadcasters to legislate for their editorial content. But one of the things that I think we should do right now, because there's a whole load of things that have come together on this, is that the Parliamentary Select Committee on Culture, Media and Sport ought to do an inquiry into women's sport.
All right, well, let me just take you back to the golf course. Did it worry you that Muirfield was a men's-only club in 2002 when it was holding the championships and you were in power?
Yeah, well, actually, in the Equality Act, which I took through Parliament, we actually put that exemption in because we couldn't get an agreement to end the exemption. There's always been this exemption for men-only sports clubs, and I wanted to take it out, but we were having so many rows on so many things.
Do you think that sort of makes
Now's
a big
the time
difference?
to do it, though, now that the Prime Minister is saying that...
Now that they're
he's
in power.
against it. No, now that there's a cross-party agreement on it. We couldn't get agreement on it. We didn't want the whole Act to fall because of this one provision, but now there's a chance to amend that.
What would be the single most important thing as a woman athlete that you'd like to see change?
For me, justice after London 2012 would be a ban on male membership-only clubs, definitely. And I think, you know, we've earned that right. We've proved to ourselves that we are worthy of competing on a world stage and can be successful on a world stage. And I think, you know, as part of perhaps Olympic legacy, that's something that should definitely be addressed.
Thank you both very much indeed. Thanks.